Hello friends, it's good to see you again. How are you doing? There is a video here that I want to share with you today. It is a Q&A session with Pastor Ron Kelly. And in the video, friends, Pastor Ron Kelly answers questions about ADRA. He also answers questions about the salaries of pastors, all right? And he even mentioned his own salary when he was working with the Michigan Conference. How much was Pastor Ron Kelly receiving for a whole year? How much was he taking? Friends, he also answered questions about some recent activities or events that happened at the General Conference session. I mean the recent one, the 2025 General Conference session. So this video is going to be very interesting. It's going to answer some of your questions. So I would like you to watch this video until the end. And I would also encourage you to subscribe to this channel if you have not.
It says salary.com.
And is it for the church?
It says the Southwestern Union Conference of Seventh-day Adventists, the president. So I did a little checking here. Let me see if I can pull it up, back up. I asked ChatGPT. Okay. And they say, let me go back to the beginning here because I think it's interesting. This is in light of the whole tithe issue. The image shows a claimed salary range for the president of Southwestern Union Conference and I said the numbers there. However, this does not appear to be accurate for the following reasons. Is the Adventist salary structure, including its unions, conferences, uses a standardized wage scale for its employees, including administrators. These are not for profit, and religious and executive compensation is far lower than that of corporate CEOs or similar sector. Typical union conference president in the U.S. makes somewhere in the low six figures or less, often tied to the denominational wage factor, which varies by region and cost of living, benefits, and so on. So I know when I pastored, they had this thing called 150% remuneration factor, depending on how many years you had served. And I think my ending salary there was probably close to $50,000 a year. I never heard of this kind of figures here.
I don't think those figures are accurate. The president in the Michigan Conference may make 5 or 10% more than the pastors. I think my salary when I ended was $62,000. Mm-hmm. So no pastor's getting rich, and I don't think the administrators have their hands in the till. One of the issues that came up in the General Conference was administrators getting paid to serve on boards for ADRA. That's right. And I think that needs to be examined and fixed but I don't think the administrators are the union probably makes maybe 5 or 10% more than the conference, but they've tried to hold them to where we don't work for money. So I think somebody's off on that. Yeah. That's my opinion.
Well, the issue that you brought up about the ADRA salaries, U.S. aid, I assume that's where that's coming from, NGOs. They were saying that Ted Wilson was in $120,000 a year. I assume that's over and above his tithe paid salary. And then Ayrton Cooler is like $150,000.
Yeah, you can get online and look at the ADRA 990. If anybody wants to do it, Google ADRA 990 2023. Mm-hmm. And you can look, nonprofits are required to report. ADRA has to report, the General Conference has to report.
Yeah.
And it'll show you compensation for the top 10 or whatever amount of employees they have. And the challenge is that some of our presidents are living in very expensive places. Some of them are making, if you want to put 5 or 10% more on, I'm no expert on the finances of the church. I've sat on a lot of committees. But it wouldn't surprise me if the General Conference president's making around $100,000 a year. It appeared by my reading of the 990s that some of them were getting a more than what we might consider reasonable honorarium for sitting on the board of ADRA. The problem is, it doesn't appear that there's really any forum to talk about this. I do think that people like Brother Lawrence and James DeValian with Adventist Media Connect and some of these people have created a necessary discussion. If we can do it without being negative, it needs to be done. That's my sense. But our denominational employees, including our presidents, they're not making, everybody's working, at least most everybody's working for a missionary wage. That's
Do you think that the wage scale issue is driving some of the blindness about your situation?
In what way? What are you thinking of?
Well, I don't know. With President Jim Mitchell, could you be threatening the wage scale in some way by talking about these things and opening up a door?
The truth is, I didn't talk about much of any of this. I was very careful about what I said when I preached. On September 21 of last year, which was the Sabbath Conrad got banned, I preached a sermon called Crucial Conversations. If you haven't seen it, I'd encourage you to go back and watch it. In that sermon, in the last 10 minutes, I went back and forth very nicely between Conrad and the General Conference, and I said, it's probably not helpful. It was a very nice rebuke to both sides. I respect both sides. I'm personal friends with Conrad, but my friendships, you don't get a pass just because we're friends. My friendships are oriented around the principle of Christ first and the principles of obeying him and, in this case, being good leaders. In that sermon, I nicely challenged him to be careful how he said things, and I nicely challenged the General Conference not to be banning and blacklisting and de-delegatizing people, etc. That's as direct as I think I ever got with the denomination. During COVID, I preached a sermon called, I think it was called Cowardice and Courage at the End or something like that. That sermon went viral. But I didn't name anybody. I didn't call anybody out. You know, the Bible says, let him who have ears hear what the Spirit says to the churches. And so I believe that my releasing was a function of strong disagreement behind the scenes about how Conrad had been processed. The banning. I'm still hoping for a better outcome. I don't know if or when it'll happen. I love the church. But I don't think I was released over any of these peripheral issues. I think in the end, the strength of my disagreement over how this was being carried out was the straw that broke the camel's back. And, in the first 2 minutes of Erton Kohler's message last Sabbath, he said, we are a family. And he said it more than once. In a family, you go the extra mile. You attempt to redeem. You hold people accountable. I was let go on the basis of at-will employment law for being a bully, insubordination, and fomenting dissent against the conference. I don't believe I did any of those things, but obviously enough people were convinced I did that they let me go. So we're stuck. Because if you're going to have the courage of a prophet and a prophetic role in your church, sometimes that prophetic role, like in the Old Testament, like in the New, is going to be focused. Ellen White says the church has problems. Enfeebled and defective as she may be, this is Testimony to Ministers, page 49, needing to be rebuked and reproved. Well, who's going to do it? If your preachers don't have enough courage to do it, woe be unto everybody else. At this point in time, I'm convinced the lay people are going to have to show the nobility, the kindness, and the courage to stand up and speak. You get enough people speaking to leaders who can't be ignored. Remember, I told you in the first service, make it hard for them not to listen to you. Carry yourself with appreciation prayerful gratitude for their service, even though you don't agree with everything. And then nicely tell them what you really believe and show them why, briefly. Don't use a lot of their time, and let it be. I've practiced these things. Right now, I believe that the situation with me is a shake-up before there's a shake-out. And that's where I'm at.
I mention it because as a pastor, my first district, I had 3 churches like you did in New York. The New York conference is hurting right now. They keep adding more and more churches to the pastors.
The churches are dying.
In the Oregon conference, the last district I served, partly, and I'll use the word, the previous conference president's malfeasance with the operation of money put them in like $1.5 million debt. And so they added 2 more churches to the district I served. And Russell Burrell and his revolution of the church, unleashing the awesome power of lay ministry. He says we got too used to having settled pastors in our churches, and there should be more lay ministry work. But that's really not the case right now. Most of the churches, maybe they tend to be pastor dependent, and then pastors put on more. But when you try to manage 5 different churches, do prayer meetings.
You're not too settled when you have five churches.
It's unbelievable. Anyway, that's just the challenge. I'm speaking for the buck private pastors that are struggling in some of these districts, while these guys upstairs are getting these 6-figure incomes. I have a problem with that.
Well, I don't know much about Oregon, but I will tell you this. The laws that govern renewal are spiritual and relational. And while you cannot formalize renewal, you should not, just like if you have a failing basketball team and they don't know how to dribble, you should teach them how to dribble. So there are fundamentals of church growth that cannot be violated. And then there's the Spirit coming in to bring life. If we can get back to those 2 things, we'll see life. And my testimony is in 37 years. Every time I tried not to turn from the left to the right, this is Joshua 1. I pray this prayer regularly. Lord, make me a Joshua 1 man. This book of the law should not depart out of your mouth. Meditate it on it day and night. Don't turn to the left or the right. Nobody will be able to stand against you. Everywhere your foot treads will be yours, and everything you do will prosper. And if you go to Deuteronomy 28, it says your enemies will rise up in front of you one way, and they'll be scattered 7. I'll chase you down to bless your bread bowl, bless your barns, bless your kids. Bless, 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 bless. That's the first 14 verses. And the last 60 verses are about how God's going to curse us if we turn away, because he's not going to make it easy to damn ourselves. Are we willing to humble ourselves and pray? God's willing to come down and start the fire.
So, friends, honestly speaking, I really like how Pastor Ron Kelly was answering the questions. He was very, very careful. If you actually watched or listened to him very well or closely, he was very careful in the choice of his words. But friends, there is another part of the video that actually caught my attention. Yes, in the video you heard my name in the video, and Brother James also. That was fine. But there is this part that actually caught my attention, and I learned something from it, friends. I learned something from it, and I want us to watch the part that I'm talking about right now. Let's watch it, friends.
That you can't receive lots and lots of money and favor from the government and not kind of factor that into some of your decision making. It's an opinion. I'm not here to excoriate. My guess is that when we entered into those relationships, we thought they would be good and advance the cause. But somewhere along the line, it's like that train I talked about. When it started picking up speed and you sensed it was going off in a wrong direction, we probably needed to be having discussions. Well, we're having them now. So, yep, back over. And then we had a question down here in the front too.
So my question is, with the recent apology at the GC session regarding the statements, do we think that there was some sort of a vindication that took place there, in the sense that we do have an issue with these statements because what was voted was not what has been up on the website for the last 10 years, which has caused significant trouble. So was there some sort of indication that there needs to a discussion needs to be had? That's number one. And then number two, how do we overcome the disconnect where members can see clearly there's some issues in the church that needs to be addressed, but somehow at the leadership level there doesn't seem to be that level of awareness?
Well, I do think, excuse me, that in this last GC session, discussions that were completely stifled 3 years ago have made it into the culture of discussion, and I consider that very important. In my first message this morning, I entitled it, basically, Why Nobody's Listening. When you get on one of these sites and you type in a comment, type a comment that's Christian, because what happens with some of these leaders, they go to Brother Lawrence's site or AMC, and they see some of these comments that are just, they're not Christian. And then they can just kind of sweep the whole discussion off to the side. So when you see one of those comments, respond to it. Show the watching institutional world that most of the people at this site are fair-minded, reasonable Christians.
All right, friends. So I understand that many Adventists do watch this channel. By God's grace, I give God the praise. I give God the glory. It is not by my might. It is by the grace of God that the channel has grown from 0 to over 100,000 subscription. We thank God for that. And friends, the leaders of the church, when I say the leaders, the top leaders, every leader, many of them do watch this channel sometimes. They do read the comments that are under the videos that I publish. Like, some of the comments are critical. Yes, I understand. Some of the comments, like, sometimes I delete comments that seems to insult some of the leaders. We do not entertain insults and attack here, no. So I would like to plead with all Adventists, my brothers and sisters, those that have subscribed to this channel, those that watch me. I love you all. I do not hate you. You are all my friends. I appreciate everything that you are doing in prayers and everything to support the work of God and also this channel. But I want to plead with you that if you want to comment, if you want to comment and the videos that I publish, please don't attack, don't insult. We can make our voices heard without insults. We can make our voices heard without attack. We should be very kind in the comments that we put under videos. We should just put our points across and just leave it there. All right. So this is what I just want to say. I just want to say. All right. So if you would like to watch the full Q&A, you're going to find it on the YouTube channel of Pastor Ron Kelly. All right, Pastor Ron Kelly. Or you would find a link to the video in the description or in the comment section. All right, I'll put everything there in some minutes to come. All right, minutes to come. So that's it. So there are some updates that are coming. Yes, I'm working on them. The church is actually doing well. Praise be to God, friends. Praise be to God. So please, if you have not subscribed to this channel, I encourage you to subscribe because there are more things coming up. You need to know what is taking place. So thanks for watching. See you next time. May God bless.